The chapel fell into a stiff, breathless stillness the moment my mother's voice sliced across the aisle. "You changed your name." Not a question, not shock, just accusation wrapped in disbelief. Dozens of heads turned toward me. My father's fingers curled sharply around the funeral program, tightening until the paper bowed. My brother halted in the doorway. Even my sister blinked like someone had abruptly switched off the lights. I slipped quietly into the second pew, the laminated program still warm in my hand. There, printed in clean, unembellished ink, was the name I had chosen for myself. A name no one here had ever been invited to use. Beside me sat a chair marked family, the ribbon perfectly tied, the upholstery untouched. Just like every milestone seat they had left empty my entire life. I stared at that vacant chair. Something shifted inside my chest. Subtle, quiet, but final. They thought today revealed something about me. They didn't realize it was revealing them instead. I grew up learning how to fold myself into corners of louder lives. In our house in Austin, loud meant meaningful, and meaningful never applied to me. The more noise someone made, the more space they were allowed to claim. Mom's heels used to echo across the kitchen tile whenever one of my siblings needed anything. Urgent or trivial didn't matter. Vivian always received softness, the warm smile, the hand on her shoulder. Brendan always got the proud smirk and booming encouragement. And me? I was the one who learned not to need anything, the one who packed her own lunches, cleaned her own messes, and stayed quiet enough not to disrupt the orbit of people who believed their plans mattered more than mine ever could. I realized the pattern when I was 12. Vivian had an art show in the school gym. A row of colorful canvases hung neatly along the wall. My mother hovered near her, smiling for neighbors, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles on her dress. I stood in the corner holding a certificate from a regional science competition I'd won earlier that morning. They hadn't come. They hadn't even remembered. Mom passed me without pausing. She handed me Vivian's jacket with the same tone one uses for a coat rack. "Hold this," she murmured, eyes already drifting back toward my sister. The certificate crinkled loudly when I stuffed it into my pocket, loud enough that someone should have noticed. No one did. Years later, during my high school graduation, the seats marked for my family stayed empty until halfway through the ceremony. My siblings chose a lake party over attending. My parents claimed they were stuck in traffic, but I learned later they'd stopped for coffee on the way. When my name was called, I scanned the auditorium for the people who were supposed to care. All I saw was a single empty chair. I clutched the program so tightly the corner tore off. I sat down slowly, legs trembling, pretending it didn't matter. College wasn't different. At Rice University, I reminded them weeks in advance about a departmental award ceremony. Vivian sent a heart emoji. Brendan didn't respond. My parents replied days later with a casual, "Well, try." No one came. I ate takeout alone on the dorm steps that night with the certificate still in its envelope beside me. A recognition they had never bothered to open. Over time, I grew quieter. Not because I wanted to disappear, but because pushing back only invited the same dismissive line from my mother. "Don't be dramatic, Mara." Dad always nodded without lifting his eyes from his phone. Eventually, my protests dwindled to nothing. The last memory that lodged itself like a thorn came from a research symposium my final year. I presented early work on desalination, 5 seats reserved for my family, all unoccupied. Right before my presentation, a text buzzed, a photo from Brendan grilling at a backyard party. "Wish you were here." He didn't mean it. He never did. That was the day I understood my place, a quiet edge in their lives, visible only when I stayed silent. The shift inside me didn't come from a single explosion. It built slowly, pressure behind a door I'd kept barricaded for years. But it finally cracked 8 months before my dissertation defense. I sent them the official announcement from Stanford, a clean white document with the date and time printed in bold. I texted it, emailed it, even added it to the family group chat. April 22nd, 3 p.m. Mom responded hours later. "So proud, sweetheart." Vivian reacted with a thumbs up. Brendan typed a bored, "Nice." I told myself it was enough. All winter, I repeated the date at every family dinner. Mom nodded while scrolling through her phone. Dad murmured something non-committal. Vivian talked about her kids' soccer schedules. Brendan bragged about meat rubs and new grill settings. Still, I reminded them. 5 months, 3 months, 6 weeks, 2 weeks. Each reminder felt like knocking on a locked window that only opened for other people. Then in February, Brendan posted it. Spring Barbecue Bash, April 22nd, 1 to 6 p.m. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. When I called him, he sounded genuinely confused. What time is your thing again? As if he hadn't heard it 20 times. 3 o'clock, I said. People can do both, he replied. Just come after. He knew Stanford was an hour away. He also knew no one attending his barbecue would leave early. Mom wasn't better. Honey, don't be dramatic, she said when I called. We'll work it out. But I felt it then, something cold and steady rising inside me. They weren't confused, they weren't busy. They simply chose something else, again. The final confirmation came the day before my defense. Mom answered the phone over the thump of loud music. I'm at Brendan's helping set up, she said. Chaos here. And tomorrow? I asked. 3 o'clock? We'll be there, she said, distracted. She didn't even finish the sentence before hanging up. The next afternoon, standing outside Patterson Hall, my phone buzzed with her voice. Where are you? We're all at Brendan's. I didn't reply. I let the silence stand, heavy and clean. Then I walked into the auditorium and defended 8 years of work without a single family member present. When the panel said, "Congratulations, Dr. Ellison," the ache was familiar, quiet, like something I'd been carrying since childhood. That night, while messages from them piled on my phone, I opened my laptop and created a folder titled Transition, the first step toward a life they would no longer be allowed to shape. For weeks after my defense, silence wrapped itself around me like a weighted blanket, heavy enough to feel, familiar enough not to resist. My phone kept lighting up with messages from home, each one dripping with surprise, guilt, or outright denial. Where were you? We thought the location changed. You said 3, didn't you? Every excuse was a different flavor of the same truth. My achievement had never mattered enough for them to remember. I didn't respond, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. I had spent 29 years stitching myself into their fabric, only to realize I was the thread they always trimmed away. The folder on my laptop, Transition, grew daily. Paperwork, notes, logistical details. The slow and deliberate steps toward a life that wasn't built on their absence, but strengthened by the decision to stop begging them to fill it. Still, disconnecting from your own family doesn't happen in a single clean cut. It unravels in small, disorienting moments. The last moment came unexpectedly. 3 weeks after my defense, I received a voicemail from my sister, Vivian. Her voice sounded strained, as if she were trying to keep her tone sunny but failing miserably. Mara, hey, can you call me? Something's going on with Mom and Dad. It's not serious. I mean, it is, but not in a medical way. Just call me, okay? I stared at my phone, unsure whether I should reopen a door I'd only just had the courage to close. But the message left a weight in my throat, and I dialed. Vivian answered before the first ring finished. Oh my God, Mara. They're saying you're freezing out the family and it's becoming this huge thing. Dad's angry, Mom's... I don't know. She called me crying last night. The words slid through the speaker carefully, like she was testing each one before releasing it. Before you say anything, she added quickly, I know they messed up. I know. But can you at least tell them you're not disappearing forever? Disappearing forever. That was the dramatic phrase they landed on. I'm not disappearing, I said slowly. I'm just choosing peace. Vivian fell silent. For a moment, I almost felt guilty. Almost. But guilt requires the belief that you did something wrong. I was beginning to understand that choosing yourself wasn't wrong. It was overdue. Vivian sighed, heavy and tired. Will you come for dinner this Sunday? She asked. Mom said she wants to talk, calmly. Calmly? My mother never did anything calmly when confronted with something she didn't like. But despite my hesitation, some part of me, the child who still wanted a seat at the table, whispered that maybe this time would be different. Fine, I said, Sunday. The air on Sunday evening tasted like old dust and a lingering scent of rosemary. My parents' house hadn't changed in years, a tidy museum of selective memories. Family portraits lined the hallway, each perfectly framed. In every photo, I looked like a guest. Mom met me at the door. Her eyes looked puffy, but her posture was rigid, like emotion was something she refused to carry openly. Mara, she said softly. Not sweetheart, not honey. Just my name, bare and ordinary. We sat at the dining table. Dad lowered his newspaper slowly, the way he did whenever a conversation demanded real attention. Vivian sat between us, acting as a buffer. I braced myself. Mom began. Why are you doing this? She asked, voice trembling but with a sharpness underneath. Why are you punishing us? I blinked. Punishing you? Yes, Dad said, leaning forward. You ignored us for weeks. You shut us out. You're treating your own family like strangers. My pulse thudded once hard. I told you for months about my defense date, I said carefully. Months. You chose not to come. Mom's lips pressed tight. We wanted to be there, she protested. Of course we did, but Brendan's barbecue? I felt the sting behind my ribs, the familiar sensation of disbelief. You prioritized a barbecue over the biggest day of my career, I said, and now you want to pretend it was a misunderstanding? Dad's face hardened. Don't twist things, Mara. Vivian put a hand up gently. Can everyone breathe for a second? But breathing wasn't the issue. The issue was the way this room always shrank whenever I spoke. The way every feeling I had was rewritten into something more convenient for them. Mom's voice cracked. We didn't know you'd be so upset. The room fell still. I looked at her, truly looked, and I realized she genuinely believed that. She really didn't understand why her absence mattered, why it hurt. They had missed birthdays, recitals, ceremonies, competitions, presentations. My life had unfolded in the pauses between their priorities. And somehow my reaction was the problem. I felt it then, the shift. Not the anger, not the disappointment. The clarity. Mom, I said quietly, I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. Her chin trembled. Dad shook his head. From what? We're your family. Exactly, I whispered. And family is supposed to show up. Not just in emergencies or when it's convenient. You didn't show up for me for 29 years. The silence that followed was cold and stripped bare. Vivian swallowed hard. She's right, she murmured, surprising everyone. She's been right for a long time. Dad's face reddened. You're taking her side? I'm not taking sides, she said softly. I'm telling the truth. Mom looked between us, eyes widening. I can't believe this, she whispered. After everything we've done for you kids? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. Dad slammed his hand down lightly. So what now? You cut us out? No, I said. I'm setting boundaries. They exchanged confused glances. Boundaries? Mom repeated the word like it was foreign. I'm not going to keep chasing connection with people who only offer it when it suits them, I continued. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be mutual, consistent, respectful. Mom whispered, We're losing you. I breathed in deeply. You never had me. Not fully. You had the version of me who tried endlessly for your attention. I felt my voice steady itself. I'm done trying. Vivian's eyes shimmered. Dad looked stunned. Mom covered her mouth. I stood slowly. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm just done hurting. And for the first time in my life, I walked out of that house without waiting for someone to call me back. No one did. The hallway outside the conference room buzzed with low voices, but all I could hear was the thud of my heart. 3 days had passed since I confronted my father and stepped out of the house that had shaped me, broke me, and somehow made me strong enough to walk away. In those 3 days, I hadn't cried once. Not because I wasn't hurting, God. I was, but because I felt like crying would drown me in a tide I wouldn't be able to swim out of. Today wasn't about tears. Today was about truth. Mira squeezed my hand as we approached the glass doors. You don't have to do this alone, she whispered. I nodded, though I wasn't sure whether I believed it or not. Maybe I did have to do it alone. Maybe standing alone was the point. Inside, the room was set exactly the way my mother always liked things. Organized, symmetrical, quietly intimidating. She stood by the window, shoulders hunched slightly, arms wrapped around herself as if trying to hold her own ribs in place. She looked smaller than I remembered, as though distance had shrunk her. My father sat on the opposite side of the table, fingers drumming in restless patterns on the polished wood. Between them sat the lawyer, stern-faced, silver hair, expression unreadable. It felt like walking into a courtroom where I was both the witness and the accused. My mother turned at the sound of the door, and her entire face softened. Alina, she breathed, as if saying my name relieved something heavy inside her. She moved toward me but stopped a few steps away, hesitating, unsure of whether she still had the right to embrace me. We're starting now, the lawyer announced, gesturing for everyone to sit. This conversation is not legal arbitration. It's a meeting to clarify misunderstandings and determine the best path forward. Misunderstandings. The word felt small compared to the wreckage sitting between us. My father shifted his weight. We wouldn't be here if she hadn't. Henry, the lawyer cut in sharply, let her speak first. A strange calm washed over me. The kind that comes when you finally realize you're not standing in a burning house anymore. You're standing outside, watching the smoke fade. I took a slow breath. 3 days ago, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I left the house because I couldn't stay in a place where I felt like an intruder in my own life. My father opened his mouth, but the lawyer raised a hand for silence. I spent years trying to be someone you could be proud of, I continued. I tried to be quiet enough, obedient enough, invisible enough to fit your shape. But no matter how much I tried, there was always something. My choices, my voice, my existence, that felt like an inconvenience to you. My mother's eyes shone with unshed tears. My father's did not. You weren't an inconvenience, he muttered. You were difficult. The words hit like a blade with a dull edge. No clean cut, just bruises. Mira shifted beside me, ready to snap, but I touched her wrist lightly. I didn't come here to fight. I came here to be heard. What I need, I said, turning my gaze back to my father, is not your approval. I've finally realized that. What I needed was honesty, respect. A place where my voice wasn't treated like noise. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tightening. So what now? You want an apology? I want acknowledgement, I said softly. Of what happened, of how I felt, of the ways we broke. My mother pressed her fingertips to her forehead, exhaling shakily. Your father isn't good with emotions, she whispered. I wasn't asking for poetry, I said. Just the truth. A long silence stretched across the table like a tightrope. Finally, the lawyer cleared his throat. Let's move to the practical concerns. Alina, you left the house with no belongings. You have the right to retrieve your things safely. We can schedule— I don't want anything from that house, I interrupted gently. Except the letters. My father frowned. What letters? The ones Mom kept in the attic, I said softly. The ones she wrote to herself. The ones she never sent. My mother's head snapped up. You read those? Only the ones with my name in them, I replied. Only the ones where you wrote about wanting to protect me. Her hand flew to her mouth as tears finally spilled down her cheeks. She whispered something I couldn't hear. My father looked between us, confused and suddenly uneasy, as if the room had shifted its weight without warning. The lawyer turned to him. It seems your daughter's request is simple. She wants closure, not conflict. My father stared at the table. His fingers stopped drumming. For the first time in years, he looked tired. Tired in a way that made my chest ache despite everything. Alina, he said, his voice low, I don't know how to undo what I did. I don't know how to speak the way you want me to, but I never wanted to lose you. There it was, not an apology, not an admission, but the closest thing he had ever offered to vulnerability. I nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to stop pretending everything was fine while expecting me to stay silent. He looked away, jaw clenched. My mother reached across the table, her hand trembling, resting lightly over his. He didn't pull away. The lawyer closed the folder in front of him. I suggest all of you take some time. There's no need for decisions today. But I knew my decision already. I stood. I'm not coming back home, I said quietly. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I'm willing to talk. Slowly. Carefully. From a distance. My mother nodded through her tears. My father didn't speak, but his silence felt different, heavier, more thoughtful. As Mira and I walked toward the door, my mother whispered, Come back when you're ready. Not for us. For you. Outside, the afternoon sun was almost too bright. I closed my eyes and breathed in the air, crisp and clean. For the first time, the world didn't feel like something I had to escape. It felt like something I could finally step into. I wasn't healed, I wasn't finished, but I was free. And that was enough.